Welcome everyone to Sego's App Experiences webinar on iOS 11, new features and what you need to know for mobile testing. My name is Margarita. I'm the Director of Marketing for App Experience. In today's webinar, we're talking about iOS 11, which debuts today. We'll be highlighting specific new features that will likely impact your mobile testing. In addition to this webinar, we have more great resources and information on our website, so please check that out at appexperience.segos.com. And feel free to contact us at any time. We have mobile solutions experts available who are happy to answer your questions, give you a demo, talk about your need, or even set you up with a free trial. Our speakers today are Shadab Siddiqui, Senior Technical Solutions Engineer at Sego's App Experience, and Patrick Coulter from Quomont, who will introduce themselves in just a minute. But before we start, I want to let you know at the end of the webinar, we will be dedicating a Q&A as time permits. So if you look in your control panel, you should see a question section where you'll be able to submit your questions. Feel free to submit your questions throughout the webinar. You don't have to wait until the end. Patrick will be going through those questions and will be answering them along with Shadab at the end. And if you had a question and we weren't able to answer, shoot us an email and we could be happy to answer it for you. We are also recording this session and we'll be sending you a copy when it becomes available so you can refer back to it at any time. And without further ado, I'll pass it off to Shadab and Patrick.
Thank you. Thank you, Margarita. Hi. Hello, everyone. This is Shadab. Shadab Siddiqui. I work as a technical solution consultant for Sego's. I've been working on mobile applications for the last 10 years. And I have my friend Patrick Coulter. Patrick, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Thanks, Shadab. Hello, everyone. Good to be with you today. As Margarita mentioned, I'm Patrick Coulter, owner of Quomont, and I'm happy to be presented today with our partner Zygos. Our company has been using the Zygos App Experience Suite for over several years now, and we're looking forward to discussing what this means for iOS 11. Shadab?
Thank you. All right. So before we start, let's talk about Sego's. Who is Sego's? So Sego's have a product line App Experience that provides a comprehensive suite of solutions for on-device app testing and app monitoring. And many of you might be aware of the name Device Anywhere, Keynote Mobile Testing. Yes, these were our names, our former names. And we have a patent for remote device interaction technology since 2003. We have a solution for from single developers to global enterprises. We have thousands of devices available in public and private cloud or on-premise. These 1,000 devices are real devices. We don't use any simulators or emulators. So it's like devices real devices you are controlling remotely and creating automation scripts, monitoring scripts, and so forth. We also have integration with leading CI platforms like Jenkins, Bamboo, and others. And it goes without saying that we are leader in mobile testing since 2005, 2006. Also, we have over 300 deployment locations and deployable anywhere in the world on-premise. So we have cloud-based and also private on-premise solutions. So what we're gonna discuss today. So we'll start with discussing about iPhone, iPad, and iOS, and then we'll move to new features coming in iOS 11. iOS 11, as you all know, iOS 11 is coming today, and we'll discuss about the impact it can bring on your testing. And then, at the last, we'll have Q&A where you can post your questions, and we'll be happy to answer you. Okay, so evolution of the iPhone. Yes, it's hard to believe that the first iPhone was launched almost 10 years ago in 2007. In this time, there has been tons of innovations from that first generation iPhone, from the simple launch of the App Store, which seems so obvious now, to Retina display, to Touch ID, to FaceTime, and now Apple Pay. As we know, the phone and the tablet have changed beyond the addition of the new features. If you go back to the last 4 iPhones, you will see that it has 4 different screens, 5 different resolutions, right? And the processing power is often different. So can be the networks the phone supports. So the phone could be on T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, and so on and so forth. So while this platform is certainly more uniform than Android, because Android is could be on different manufacturers like LG, Samsung, Motorola, and so on and so forth. But it's still not. But the iOS device is still not simple and uniform it once when it was first launched. Which means, of course, with the same OS, it's still important to test across different phones models because your app may act differently on them. Now, talking about iPad, you see a similar story with the iPad. Even more so because unlike the iPhone, people tend to upgrade the iPad less often. So you still have large crowd or large number of users still using the old iPads. Like I still have iPad 2 at home. I haven't upgraded my iPad to the latest one, but I have upgraded my iPhones very regularly. Of course, here there is a less variation in iPad, but still a different hardware configuration to contend with, and you still have to test across different iPads as well. So here I have some data. So now talking about iOS software and hardware, how does that matter? Well, the iPhone is the single biggest install base of the devices. No other device gets close. With then the launch of the iPad and the other devices, there are now over 1 billion iOS users out there. So even one of the older models could have a larger user base than more recent popular phones. So if you see uh, on my left, uh, there is 87% of the iOS users are using iOS 10. So it's a pretty good number. It looks like the iOS users upgrade their software more often. But still, we have 3% or of the 1 billion people using the old OS, which are older than 9. So that means if the 3% of 1 billion is still uh, a huge number of users, right? So we cannot ignore those users as well. Okay, and similarly, there are different hardware versions in circulation with differences that could impact your app. So this means that more testing across more hardware and software platforms, increasing the need for an efficient automated test strategy. So here I have some data. So if you really see, there are approximately 20% of the 1 billion people, more than 1 billion people is still using older phones, which is iPhone 4 and earlier and iPhone 4S. So which is a huge number. And when you talk about iPad, we still have it's more numbers because, as I said, as we have noticed that people do not upgrade the iPad more as often as they upgrade the hardware of phones. So we still have 42% of the people or the iOS users or iPhone users still using iPads. All right, so now we talk about iOS 11. So uh, there is a news from Apple that Apple is officially dropping the support for 32-bit devices. So it will be the following 64-bit Apple devices are supported by iOS 11. So that means if all the phones that are older than 5S, like 4 and or older one, will not be compatible with iOS 11. And same with iPad. So the oldest can be iPad Mini too. All right. So now let's talk about iOS 11 features. So as we know, iOS 11 is here today. There are many new features, but these are the few features that could we have selected that we think that could impact your testing. Your developers can incorporate these features now or later, but as a testing perspective, we have to be prepared. So, and if you talk about iPad is simply doesn't work the same way. Apple has completely changed the user experience with a big emphasis on multitasking. everything seems more fluid and connected. For instance, you can drag and drop the app files between the multiple apps, drag an icon from the new introduced dock to open a window app on top of your full screen app, and more. Apple introduced iOS 9 split screen and slide over. It was the first time Apple introduced new features for iPad in particular. But with iOS 11, the company is going one step further and finally considered iPad as capable devices that can be much more than a bigger iPhone. While there are few user-facing features, the most promising changes are going to take time. Developers will have to embrace new frameworks. So we'll go through these features: drag and drop for iPad, app switcher for iPad, one-handed keyboard, swipe gestures for notification and control center, and this exciting iPad dock. And we have very cool APIs coming in iOS 11, Arcade, augmented reality, machine learning, and many changes in CD as well. So we'll go through these features one by one. And from here, I would like to give control to Patrick.
Yep, thank you, Shadab. And we could jump over to the next screen. We'll talk about the drag and drop features. So all drag and drop features are available on iPad. On iPhone, however, drag and drop is available only within an application itself. So on iPads, it's particularly useful because of the ability to work in that split screen mode, and rather than manually trying to do this essentially the same task of doing a copy and paste from one app to the other. You can now do that all in one shot because of the split screen mode, and because you can just move relevant data over a particular app icon and let the application take over. You can also spring load items when you drag and drop items over an app's icon, meaning the app springs or it pops open, and then you can drop content wherever you want. So any app that implements the standard text controls of iOS gets basic drag and drop for free. For example, think about highlighting text from a website in Safari and then dragging that block into a text editor. And other Apple built-in UI techniques like table views will also work with drag and drop right out of the box. But if developers end up embracing the extended opportunities here, we could see apps with more complicated data types talk to each other, and in really unique ways. In order to get there, iOS developers will need to utilize a new Apple API to ensure drag and drop items can be recognized by apps correctly. And this new API allows developers to specify thumbnails, metadata, and the exact data payload. When a user hovers over an item or a collection of items and makes the elements hover over the app, that app can see the metadata, but not the actual payload. And this is great for security reasons. But the ability to use metadata, hints, and arbitrary data formats in a drag and drop interaction could unlock really interesting new inter-app workflows. So let's think about a couple of use cases here. Maybe you could drag a video file from an editing app into an app that only accepts images and get the video's thumbnail. Or you could drop it into an audio app and extract the audio from that video. From a business standpoint, think about an insurance app. Maybe it would allow you to more easily submit an accident claim by dragging and dropping multiple images of property damage. Even more exciting is that companies that produce more than one app can more efficiently decide how their apps will complement each other utilizing drag and drop. So on the next slide here, we'll take a look at the impact of what drag and drop will do to testing. So impact is highest on manual testing, but that impact might be considered a good thing because testing can be done faster and possibly with a shorter amount of steps. So instead of several steps of copying and pasting, we can now get them done in less steps. There are some cases, like on iPad, where you can pass dragging something from that started with your left hand, pass it over to your right hand, and then complete the drop feature on the other side. And in this case, it's probably better to do this type of testing manually anyways, because it doesn't serve very well to do it in an automated fashion. It's really a manual test. But this will also affect test automation. And one of the things that we're going to need to do is add additional test cases and scripts for new drag and drop features. And as automation developers, if we're wearing our automation development hat, we'll also have to research the best way of invoking or triggering these new APIs. So something that we're going to have to think about as we get used to the rollout of iOS 11. And speaking of these new APIs, your app will naturally end up changing as developers introduce these new features into the app. And you'll have to ensure this doesn't affect the rest of your app. So existing regression test automation suites become all the more valuable. So on the next slide, let's take a look at the next feature here, which is the app switcher. Now, app switcher for iPhone, looking at this from left to right, on the left side we have iOS 10, on the right side we have iOS 11, and the good news here is that, as you can tell from the picture, the phone is not really affected by iOS 11 app switcher. What you've gotten used to by seeing a double tap on the home button, that will bring up a list of all the apps that you currently have open, and then you simply just swipe up to close them. That remains the same. And on the next slide, we'll see what that means from a testing standpoint. So as we get there to speak about this, from a testing standpoint, App Switcher for iPad, however, has changed. So gone are the bloated screenshots showing open apps that you needed to go back and forth to find. Instead, we can swipe from the bottom edge to the middle of the screen, and there we'll get to the App Switcher, and it's an expo-like view with thumbnails of your most recent apps and spaces, similar to what you're used to seeing on Launchpad on a Mac. And then alongside that is the Control Center, which is dock to the right, and then dock itself, which is at the bottom. And then you can move your finger along the dock, moving it from left to right, to show more applications. Okay. And that's good right there. And let's go to the next slide. So the impact on testing. So what's App Switcher's impact on testing in these situations? Well, like we said, for iPhone, there are very minor changes, and that should not impact our scripting. The biggest impact is going to be on iPad, as we can tell, for test automation, especially if your app relies on app switching to close applications. So again, wearing our automated tester's hat, if we're developing scripts, sometimes we like to create utility scripts that clean up devices before launching our real tests, and sometimes it's necessary to have all those apps closed before we even begin. So if we have automation which relies on a utility script like this, we're going to have to change those steps in how we actually close the apps. So that's one real life test case there that could potentially prompt us to need to change. And then finally, on the next slide, we'll look at the remaining feature, one of the remaining features, which is the one-handed keyboard. And this one's really interesting. And as we all know, users interact with apps using their fingers and voice commands. And according to a study, study that was published by UX Matters, 49% of users already navigate apps with one hand. So Apple has taken another step forward by facilitating one-hand interaction, making the keyboard itself more user-friendly. And this is to help users with typing on some of those plus-size devices. And as you can see from this screen here, The features can be set up for somebody that's left-handed or right-handed, or completely disabled so that it doesn't even show up at all. So what complexities does this add to testing? Well, now this may impact your automated test scripts if they're entering text by key coordinates. Okay, so sometimes there is a need to do that in our scripting, but for the most part, the impact will be minimal for automation that's done with Zygos technology. And that's because Zygos app experience solution enables direct key entry regardless of keyboard layout or language. And that's significant because you can continue your app testing with any new keyboard that comes along. So at this point, I'd like to hand it back over to Shadab to finish off the list of the features.
Sure. Thank you, Patrick. Uh, yeah, so the next feature is about swipe gestures for notification and control center. So earlier, if you see on the left-hand side, iOS 10, you have to do multiple swipes to go to different places, like control panel, today's notification, or the regular notification that you get, like a phone call, message, or any a Pandora updates, right? So now, if you see on your iOS 11 on the right-hand side, so all these things, the notification, control panel, and the today's notification, all these are combined together in one page. So basically, if you see, you can pull this same notification by swiping up or swiping right, and go to control panel, you can go to notifications, and today's news, and everything through one swipe. So this is a cool feature. Um, how can this impact on your testing? So if you have within your test scripts, if you have uh, where you are going to the control panel, let's suppose you want to test your application in Wi-Fi mode and in the regular carrier mode, how does your app behave, and you want to switch between them, where you go to the control center and you swipe. So now it becomes easier. It is easy in a good way, but you have to make changes in your scripts. And also same with notifications. If you're testing any notifications on your app, and you want during your test runs, you need to go to the notification. The way now you handle or you swipe to the notification is different, so that needs to be changed. It's not a major impact, but yes, little changes will be required. Going to the next feature, new iPad dock. Yes, this is something, the view is something we are familiar with, because if you have a MacBook, you know how your apps are displayed in the bottom dock. So this is a new dock is a great way to switch among popular apps, including yours. But that means the control panel has moved to a new place, as shown in the previous slide. So you don't see control panel when you swipe up from your app right now. In fact, you see a new dock, and you can switch between the apps. The user can switch between the apps by using that dock. So basically, if the user wants to do multitasking, working on different apps, he can do it. What does impact on testing? So impact like those on new swipe gestures will be on test automation. Basically, if you have an application uh, where the user needs to work on the 2 apps or 3 apps at the same time, and you can pull up, and also you want to test that if the user switch between your apps, your app or any other system app or native app, how your application behaves, and if the user is coming back to the same page or the same part of your application when user is switching the app. So this is a major change where you really need to test your application, how it behaves when the users are switching the apps during when they are inside your application. Okay, the next feature is we talk about APIs. There's one cool API, Arcade, which is augmented reality experience, and we have core machine learning and a lot of changes in Siri. So what is Arcade? It's a new framework that allows you to easily create unparalleled augmented reality experience for iPhone and iPad. It blends the digital objects and info in a physical environment. Core machine learning. So a new foundation machine learning framework is used across the product, including Siri, Camera, QuickType. It integrates a variety of machine language model type into your app. It delivers fast performance with easy integration of machine learning models, enabling you to build apps with intelligent new features like with just a few lines of code. How it does it? It takes advantages of your CPU to provide maximum performance and efficiency. It can run machine learning models on device so data doesn't need to leave devices to be analyzed. Also, multiple API calls are already available that application developers can use without having to add any additional models to their app. For example, of such computer vision algorithms are like face detection and tracking, landmark detection, event detection, and so on and so forth. So developers are also able to analyze natural languages, for example, in emails, text, and web pages. And talking about Siri, Siri now supports the new services where it learns from the user and is able to anticipate what you want and make suggestions before you even ask. And everything about you is encrypted. So it's all secured end to end, so your personal information remains private. Through advanced machine learning and artificial intelligence, Siri is more expressive with a new and more natural voice. Siri now open to apps. Siri works with your favorite apps from the App Store, so you can ask it to book a ride through a Lyft or send money to someone with Square Cash and so on and so forth. So testers may add these cases, add, maybe your developers haven't built these features, used these features until now, and if it's a heavy competition outside, if your competitors are doing it, you may want to include that as well. All right. So what impact it brings on your testing? So impact will be on both automation as well as manual testing. So if your developers are including any of these APIs, it will be a new thing, and it will impact your manual testing and automation. So testers will need to create new test cases and new test scripts to actually include these. I'm going back to include this new APIs. Okay, so this was about all the features we think could impact your testing. Okay, and how Sego's app experience can help. We provide a platform for agile development teams, and the good news is we provide day one support for iOS 11. So if you go to a cloud today and acquire iOS devices, the supported one, you should see iOS 11. Not all, but because we do not want to switch all our iPhones in the cloud to iOS 11, depending on the user's requirement. Different customers still want to test on the previous version. So, but we do support on day one. We have a support for system app or native app or web app, any applications we support, and you can do manual testing, automation, create your monitoring scripts, scheduling, everything on the any kind of app that you install on your device. So consider this as a handheld device. If you can install it on your handheld device, you can of course use our devices and test your any application. And as we discussed earlier, you can integrate with any of your build process. You can integrate with Jenkins, Bamboo, TeamCity, and any other build tools. Also, we provide comprehensive cloud-based library of real mobile devices. We provide iOS, Android, tablets, and phones. So uh, we have over 350 plus devices in our cloud, and which include iOS, Android, tablets, different OS versions in it. So if you guys are not aware, we have a very flexible scripting option. So you don't need to know Java, you don't need to know programming as such to create monitoring or automation scripts. We have a cool recording features where you can just record your use case or user steps on your phone, and it creates a script for you. And you can customize your scripts. You can put for loops, and you can put if else conditions. You can customize your results, your reports. You can create test suites. So it's very easy to use. You can create your scripts in minutes, in hours, and you can create test suites very quickly. It's drag and drop. Uh, so also we provide automated and ad hoc testing. So it is not limited to only manual testing. You can do automation to do a regression test or ad hoc testing or maybe monitoring test on your applications that is in production. Okay, so that's about it. Now we are open for questions.
Hey, Shadab. Yeah, I have some questions here. Couple of them. First one says, do you need to add any code in the app for your application to work? And it's a two-parter here. And then it says, and can we record a script?
Oh, good question. So no, we do not do any instrumentation. So do not need to put anything in your code or make any changes in your code to make it work. We recognize the objects using accessibility service or the UI automation service on iOS, and you do not need to jailbreak the device or do any kind of routing on the device. So it's very simple. You just think of the phone as it's in your handheld device, okay? And you can install your app, pre-prod apps also easily. No changes in the code in your code is required. And talking about recording, yes, you can definitely record your scripts. You can easily just play on your device, and we create a script for you.
All right, that's great. Second question, can this automation tool work on Safari for testing web apps?
Oh, yes, definitely. It can work on any application. So think about as a device in your hand, right? So if you're doing a testing or manual testing on your handheld device, how would you do it? You go to Safari, you put your URL, and you test it. Same way you can do it here. You can test your web application, native applications, system applications, or hybrid application. So we are open to any kind of apps you have, and you can create automation scripts easily.
Okay. Another question here, and I can answer this one. It's why is drag and drop more secure than cut and paste? And the answer is with cut and paste, you can, depending where you start off and you're trying to highlight and do a copy or a cut of any particular text, you can then take that text and you'd be able to paste it into multiple applications wherever there's a text field. So I could do it in a text editor, I could paste it in Safari in a URL, I could put it into a search engine. So I can paste that text in multiple different spots. But if we just limit things down to drag and drop capability, now only the destination app has permission to see that data that we might want to share or move over. So you probably heard me allude earlier to the APIs that Apple has published to make drag and drop possible. And those APIs are what negotiates what information can be shared between different applications. So we're going from something like cut and paste where any application could potentially get to that data that you have, to narrowing it down to limiting what applications can share information. So that's really a good and secure thing. Last question here. Can you talk more about the ARKit API you mentioned?
Oh yes, good question. I also it's a cool API. Basically, using this ARKit API, developers can build augmented reality apps where user can actually place virtual objects in real world scenes. Users can now experience this augmented reality apps on iPhones and iPads and view virtual content on top of real world scenes so mainly for interactive gaming, immersive shopping experiences, industrial designs, and more. Actually, these apps deliver high quality reality experience using the built-in camera, powerful processors, and motion sensors in iOS devices. So I think if it's more towards the gaming or the shopping experiences, and also in the designing field, where you can actually get the reality on your application.
A lot of cool new stuff there.
Yeah.
Actually, one more question just came in at the end there. Does this integrate with any enterprise tools?
Enterprise tools.
Yeah, I think
So
they're talking about does App Experience integrate with any other tools?
we do have integration with the UFT and also Appium and other uh, CI tools like Jenkins, Bamboo, TeamCity, and so on and so forth.
Right. Okay, that exhausts the list of our questions here. I think at this time we're going to kick it back over to Margarita for any closing comments.
Well, thank you everyone for attending this webinar. Special thanks to Shadab and Patrick for leading this webinar. Before we go, I just want to share a few things. At the end of this webinar, we have a really quick survey, which will pop up in your window after the webinar is done. We'd love for you to fill it out. It gives us an idea how we did, and also gives you a chance to share what topics you'd like to hear next. Like I said earlier in the webinar, in case you missed it, we did record this webinar. So in case you want to watch it again, we'll be sending you a link when it becomes available. So please look out for that in your email shortly. And we also have a free trial and demo. So we do free personal demos of all of our solutions, performance monitoring, test automation, and manual testing in case you want to get a closer look at our tools and discuss your personal needs with one of our mobile experts. Or even if you just want to try testing out your own mobile app or site with our free trial, you can get a hands-on experience with our platform. We also provide professional services for those who are interested in scripting, training, or consulting services. So for example, if you need help writing scripts for your performance monitoring or testing, we can help with that as well. And finally, please do check us out on social media. We love to talk to you. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And that's basically it. This concludes our webinar. Thanks again for everyone who joined. We hope to talk to you soon and see you again in our next webinar.